Welcome to the latest Hear from the Experts webinar. Whether you're joining us via Zoom or on Facebook Live today, we're so glad that you can be here. This series is helping people better understand multiple sclerosis and provide tools to navigate their MS journey with more knowledge and confidence. Our intention is to help you learn more about the disease, research, wellness strategies, and much, much more. My name is Gabrielle Vito, and I'm so pleased to be your moderator for today's session. I'm a longtime volunteer with the MS Society of Canada since my own diagnosis with relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis way back in 1996. I've served various positions within the MS Society over the years. Currently, I'm on the BC Council and a member of the executive of the MS Ambassador Program. And I'm coming to you today from the beautiful city of Parksville on Vancouver Island. Now, before we get started with today's presentation, we have a couple of housekeeping details to go over. Your microphones have been muted and will remain muted for the entirety of today's presentation. This webinar is being recorded. After we add French subtitles, it will be available in approximately a month, so you can go back and review the broadcast or even share it with friends and family. If you have a question, please type it into the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll try to get to as many questions as possible following today's formal presentation. Now, please note that questions pertaining to specific personal situations cannot be answered in this type of a venue, and what we always recommend is that you contact your personal MS healthcare team, or perhaps you can contact the MS Knowledge Network for specific help. Also, please note that the MS Society of Canada does not approve, endorse, or recommend any specific product, therapy, or service, but provides information to assist individuals in making their own decisions. Now, I'm pleased to introduce you today to Lori Murphy. She is the education specialist with the MS Society of Canada, and Lori is going to introduce us and acknowledge today's webinar sponsor. Lori.
Hello. At some point in their lives, nearly half of Canadians aged 15 and older, or more than 13 million, have provided care to family members or friends who live with a long-term health condition, disability, or aging needs. Caregivers perform a range of tasks when supporting and caring for their family or friends. This can include providing transportation, helping with housework or home maintenance and maybe yard work, scheduling and coordinating appointments, managing finances, helping with medical treatments, and of course, sometimes providing personal care. Their roles may be complex, and we know that over 60% of caregivers are working at competing demands, and over 2/3 are still employed. Caregivers are real-life heroes. And they are essential to the health and wellness of people living with MS. So keeping these care partners healthy both physically and mentally is critical. The MS Society of Canada is committed to supporting all people affected by MS, including caregivers. We want to support MS caregivers by giving them wellness tools and opportunities for connections, which includes educational webinars, printed resources, plus support groups, and the one-to-one peer support program. As part of our commitment to provide caregivers with the support they need, we have collaborated with Rexall to initiate the Rexall Caregiver Network Sprint Bubble campaign. There was a goal of raising $120,000, and we are very thrilled to announce that the campaign has met its goal, and those funds will be now used to help us deliver and offer new caregiver programs and resources, including today's webinar and another this fall. We are so honored to have the sponsor support of Rexall, whose gift makes possible the Rexall Care Network Caregiver Program at the MS Society.
Wonderful news. Thank you so much, Lori. Now it is time to get on to today's presentation. So today's presenter is Donna Thomson. She's a caregiver, author, and course facilitator. Her caregiver experience was shaped by caring for her son, who has severe disabilities, and for her mother, who lived with dementia. Donna is the co-author with Dr. Zachary White of The Unexpected Journey of Caring, The Transformation of Loved One to Caregiver. She is also the author of a second book, The Four Walls of My Freedom, Lessons I've Learned from a Life of Caregiving. Donna also teaches at McMaster University. She is the co-designer and co-instructor of the Family Engagement in Research course, and a second one, she's the facilitator of the Caregiving Essentials course. Donna blogs regularly at the Caregiver's Living Room, which is at www.donnathomson.com, and she has a Facebook page. So she's very busy, and we're very glad to have her here today. Welcome, Donna. Please take it away.
Oh, thank you so much, Gabrielle. I'm really, really delighted to be here with all of you today. And congratulations for having such a wonderful program of support for family caregivers who are caring for someone with MS. So today we are going to be reflecting on this idea of well-being when someone in the family has MS. And I really want to get at what are some of the realistic possibilities for going after a sense of well-being for every person in the family, not just the individual who has MS. So I want to begin with exploring what is well-being and what do we mean by well-being. Well-being, I think, this is the Oxford Dictionary. I looked at lots of different definitions of well-being, but this was the one I think that I wanted to talk about today. So well-being is the state of being comfortable, healthy, and happy at home, at work, and in the community. So it's really the polar opposite of being worried and afraid all the time. And I think, we know it when we are experiencing a sense of well-being, and we certainly know it when we're experiencing the opposite of well-being too. So the other thing that we, really want to have a conversation about today is that so often when someone has a diagnosis of a serious illness, or particularly a chronic, progressive disease, all of the focus on wellness is on the patient. And it can be very easy for other members of the family to be forgotten or overlooked in conversations about well-being. Very often family caregivers are not asked, how are you? How are you doing? And if someone does ask us that question, very often we do not know how to answer it. As a matter of fact, on my blog, The Caregiver's Living Room, the blog post with by far the most page views was a blog post that I titled, Saying I'm Fine When I'm Not. And it's this idea that someone says, how are you? You really don't know how to answer that question because it's complicated and there is so little attention being paid by yourself and by others on actually how is the caregiver doing. But I want to talk about everyone's well-being in the family, because the family is the core civic unit of support for someone with a diagnosis of MS, as we know. So if the family's strong, everyone is going to do better. And I think in any discussion about well-being, either personal well-being or family well-being, we want to begin by sort of taking your well-being temperature. How are you doing now? And I will say now, before you begin to focus more on well-being and what might be achievable in that area. What's your starting point? Well, in terms of assessing your own sense of well-being, this is something called a wellness wheel. And you don't need to write anything down here. You can just stop and reflect for a minute. In these different domains of wellness, how are you doing today? And when this presentation is shared for you later, you can think about some of the domains here. You can revisit this periodically and see how your well-being is changing. There are so many factors that might determine your own well-being as a family caregiver. A sudden onset new symptom, a new dependency need in the person you're caring for, something at work, a change in the level of care, as you move through levels of care. If the person you love is suddenly requiring home care, for example, the introduction of strangers in your home to help you with the family caregiving that you're already doing is a huge transition. And all of these factors related to the disease progression, but other factors in your life too, also impact significantly how well you feel on any given day. And that's normal. That's normal even without the presence of MS in the family, but it becomes amplified. And the question of well-being in circumstances of adversity, in dealing with MS, this becomes critical, and we need to be intentional and very focused on what can we do to improve our own personal well-being and that well-being of every single member in the family. And some of these domains, as you take your well-being temperature, might be more important than others. So spiritual well-being may not be number one for you, but that's okay, because maybe financial well-being is a key concern, particularly if a family caregiver has had to stop working in order to provide care at home. And that may put the family under financial pressure. So this is just a reflection exercise to say, how am I doing today? How are we doing today? So we can begin to build well-being within the context of this progressive disease by considering, when was the last time you felt comfortable, healthy, and happy? And I'd like you to especially consider, when was the last time that you felt comfortable, healthy, and happy after the diagnosis? So what we're seeking to do here is brainstorm ways that we can enhance well-being in the presence of MS in the family. So sometimes, this takes some thinking about, because we don't necessarily notice these moments of feeling well, feeling a sense of well-being. We certainly notice moments. I think if I asked the question, when was the last time you felt hyper anxious, hyper vigilant, a feeling of helplessness? Those are easy moments to find in our memory banks. But these feelings of well-being may not be as easy to access, but this is an important exercise to do, to find them and then deconstruct them and say, how did I get there? What were the circumstances? What was happening around me when I felt this good, even with someone I love? And because it's not always dependent on remission, for example. we are attached at the hip to the people we love who have a diagnosis of MS, but it is possible to feel comfortable, healthy, and happy even without ongoing challenges of this diagnosis. So, how can we be more intentional about constructing moments of well-being? There is no doubt that the traumas that we have experienced as a result of this diagnosis in the family, but also the traumas that we may have experienced prior to the diagnosis. As children, many people suffer traumas. I recently was a partner on a research project looking at PTSD in parents of children with medical complexity and severe disabilities. These would be circumstances that in which parents have done CPR on their child, for example. This subject, interests me a lot because I personally had PTSD from very, very traumatic events with our son, who had a number of near-death experiences. I'm pleased to say he's doing very well now. He's 34. But they also come in combination with car accidents that I've experienced and other traumatic events in our family growing up. So how does this work, and what is the role of trauma in well-being? So the one thing I wanted to point out here is that in looking at trauma, it has a building block effect. And we think, or at least I thought prior to working on this particular research project, I had thought that the more you experience trauma, the better you get at managing it. Like anything else at life, you should get better with practice. That's not the case with trauma. Trauma in your life acts, as building blocks, so that at the end, the person kneeling on their knees with many traumas weighing them down, it doesn't take a very big trauma at all to knock you down to your knees after you've experienced many traumas. So I think this is a very important message for caregivers, because we feel less than, perhaps, when something small just knocks us down and makes us feel horrible. But I think this is the time for compassion, for taking a moment of understanding ourselves and understanding what some of these shared traumatic events in the family have been, acknowledge them, sit with them, and understand that, this is by the nature of trauma, we are acting in a normal human way to what has happened to us and to our loved one and to our family. So I think acknowledging the very difficult things that many people go through in the context of serious illness is important in then taking the next step to stand up from that fifth slide and keep going. And not just keep going with your head down looking at the ground, but keep going as you balance your life between hope and despair on a path seeking to live your best life with a sense of well-being in the whole family. And this is not, pie in the sky. I'm talking about this from a very realistic, pragmatic perspective. one exercise from the research project that we did in thinking about trauma and recovery and moving forward through adversity is an exercise called a lifeline. And this was an exercise that people participating in this study did with an online coach. And it's an exercise that anyone can do at home by themselves. See here that this is a rope, an image of a rope with flowers, candles, and rocks placed along the rope, representing a person's life. The rocks represent the traumas. The flowers represent happy or good times that are cause for celebration or just joy in someone's life. And candles represent sad things, but not traumatic, simply sad. So, in looking at your own life, your life with MS in the family is connected with your life before the diagnosis. And so it helps to put things in perspective by just doing an exercise like this at home by yourself, thinking about your life as a whole. And looking at the joys is helpful too, alongside the traumatic events. So in terms of getting to the place of well-being or working towards it, what are some of the frameworks for thinking about well-being and the tools and resources that we can use? It's interesting. When I was writing the first book that I wrote, called the Four Walls of My Freedom, I was doing a lot of research into something called the capability approach. And the capability approach was developed by an economist, actually, called Amartya Sen. And he developed this approach for helping to think about how the poorest of the world's poor in India could achieve well-being and what would be the supports that could help them given the givens of their life. And the capability approach is basically it inquires, how can someone have a life that they value given the givens of their life? And what kinds of supports do they need, and how can we help them achieve well-being? So that was a framework for me in thinking about well-being in the context of my own family. It was very, very helpful. And I did actually, working with someone from the Oxford Poverty Index at Oxford University in the UK. This was a well-being expert, Sabina Al-Khair, and she created a well-being index for my family, which we did over time, showing the change in well-being that we experienced. And we simply measured, how are we doing individually, every member of my family? And it showed the up times and the down times. And it was very, very illuminating. So frameworks are helpful. And so are tools and resources for well-being goal setting. Here is one fantastically simple, elegant tool for everyone in the family to use. It was developed in the context of childhood disability, but I present this tool. I presented it very recently to an Alzheimer's association and also to a Parkinson's association. It is just relevant to anybody in any circumstances of challenge in life. So it's called the F words of wellness, actually. And the F words are based on the International Classification of Function from the World Health Organization. And the F words are function, family, fitness, fun, friends, and future. They're not that different from the wellness wheel that I presented at the beginning of this presentation, but really looking at these F words, these are all of the domains of human life that matter to us. If we don't have one of these domains at all, we're not going to be well. So the idea of this is that you can go to the canchild.ca website, search for the F words tools under the tools heading. It's a drop-down menu, and you can print this off. You just take a pen and you write in each square what your goals are as of today in each of these domains. So function constitutes meaningful work. That could be your work at the office, but it also could mean your work at home. What is purposeful work for you? And what does that look like? What are my goals with respect to my family? That may have to do with extended family, chosen family. Fitness could be rehab. Fun, that's self-explanatory. Friends. And future is about what are my dreams for the future? What do I want to do next week, next year? And the joy, the real gift of this particular tool is that it can be used as the disease progresses or is in remission. So these domains and your capabilities and goals are going to be very different depending on how the disease is progressing at any given moment. And it can also give you the freedom and the confidence to change your goals of well-being given. So it's not about failure. Moving forward with intention. And so how to set goals using this F word frame template. So these are just some of the questions to ask yourself as you're doing this exercise. One of the other, I think, big gift about this particular tool is that every member of the family can do the F words exercise, and then everybody puts their paper down on the table and you look at each other's and you ask yourself, what can we each do to help each other member of the family achieve their F word goals? So this is very different in its approach to there is a patient in the family and only their needs and aspirations count. Nobody else's count, and we're not looking at anyone else in the family and their well-being needs. This is where we all get to put our F words paper down on the table and say, how can I help you and you and you, and how can you help me? So, our family relationships are not bidirectional with the patient. We are all intertwined. And we think about the ways that the person with MS in the family helps others. Of course, someone with MS in the family doesn't become incomplete, incompetent, unable to look after children, to care for aging parents. We care for each other until the moment that we die. So we're constantly caring for each other in the family. And I think this tool recognizes that fact. Another terrific tool to understand how you can locate opportunities to enhance well-being is something called care mapping. And it is from a website called atlasofcaregiving.com, and it was developed by a NASA scientist who is now retired and working on something called personal science in Silicon Valley, California. And his name is Rajiv Mehta. And Rajiv came up with this care mapping exercise that anyone can do with a pencil and paper. It's quite evolved, though, in terms of what it reveals to people and the research that he has done to develop a very sophisticated list of questions to ask yourself about your own care map. So actually drawing the care map is easy, and all the instructions are on the website. And you just draw a house shape for your family and where you live. If there's another family that you're supporting, or say the person with MS is living in another home from you, you would show 2 house shapes. And you draw stick people for the people who live in that house. And don't forget pets, they're part of our families too. And then you draw heavy lines for heavy support or intimate relationships. And you draw dotted lines for I see that person once in a while or talk to them occasionally. And you draw a solid line connecting people who, yes, I see them and I see them very regularly, but they're not in my innermost circle. So that's the meaning of these. And then you draw a circle around people who live close to each other. And if people are farther away, you draw them in a larger circle outside, or totally outside of the circle if they live in a different city, for example. So these are very simple, you do not need to be an artist to do this. You should see my care map. It looks kind of like this, only it's messier. But one of the things that I realized looking at my own care map actually was that I wasn't getting very much support to me. That was the thing that went, that was my aha moment for my own care map. And I just want you to look, I'm not going to read these, but just to look for a second at some of these reflection questions. They're very good. I think the first one, though, is so key. If you, the caregiver, suddenly isn't there, suddenly became ill, suddenly had to leave town or even take a holiday, who is there to replace you? What happens when you are not available? And can you look at your care map to give you some clues about who might be available? And again, here are further questions, and all of these questions too are on the care map, the website for atlasofcaregiving.com. And they are powerful reflection questions, and the answers may be in the image that you create. But it's very difficult to answer these questions without looking at your life in some kind of visual representation. Now, I just wanted to say a few words about ceremony in terms of well-being. You might be a churchgoer, in which case ceremony is definitely part of your life, part of the balm and the soothing for your soul, to calm your heart, to make you feel connected to others and to something greater, and make you feel happy and good and comfortable in your own skin. There are ceremonies that I have done for grief and healing. And one of them is a ceremony that simply involves a bowl of water and a bowl of sugar, and you every time you experience a worry, you take a pinch of sugar and you drop it into the water and watch it dissolve. At the end of the day, that water might have probably a teaspoon or so of sugar in it. Give it a little stir so it's all dissolved. Open your front door and water your garden with it, and dispense with those worries in this symbolic way. You might feel silly doing it for the first time or two, but there's a reason that the world religions have ceremony to help people feel better. And there are ceremonies that we can do in the privacy of our own home, just to help make us feel better. Sometimes it is just lighting a candle. And so consider for a minute what those ceremonies are that you do or that you could do that could enhance your sense of well-being. And again, some ceremonies can involve the whole family, and some are just personal. And this idea of pour 2 cups of tea, it's something that I refer to very often. The self-care for caregivers is very entwined with the idea of well-being. And there's so much about self-care, if you're feeling overwhelmed and you feel exhausted, well, you're just not doing self-care properly. You're not doing it well enough. I just cannot stand that messaging. I get so fed up with it. So instead, I propose this idea of 2 cups of tea, because very often we will ask the person we're caring for, would you like a cup of tea? Are you thirsty? And then you prepare a cup of tea for them and you think, well, I'll have mine later. We do this particularly if there's a crisis situation or a situation that feels like a crisis. But I want to throw this out as a proposal to consider that we make 2 cups of tea all the time, that we remember to care for ourselves as we care for a person with a diagnosis of MS, and that sometimes we just agree to be silent together and we pause to process what's going on, because I think silence and pausing to absorb moments of joy, moments of fear, moments generally that are infused with emotion in our daily lives, that pausing and that silence together with 2 cups of tea is also an ingredient in well-being, I think. It is certainly not this idea that you're caring for someone with care needs, or you're not at home, or that you're in a bubble bath. Life continuously goes on. And how do we inject this seeking every moment of the day? And locate one activity or support that would increase your comfort, health, or happiness, and ask for help to do that. And again, going back to the F words template, I think that's a good tool for this. If you have a goal that would help your well-being by going to the gym 3 times a week, for example, this is a goal. And if you need help to achieve it by asking someone else to be at home while you're not there, or to just help you be there, then articulate that. Ask for help. And just some practical ideas, just to end our presentation and get into the Q&A, just some practical ideas for well-being, comfort, and rest. I want to tell you just a little story about my friend Brenda, who has a girlfriend circle. She has a diagnosis of a serious illness, and her friends, and I'm one of her friends, created a girlfriend circle around her. And 2 of Brenda's girlfriends arrive at her door every Thursday afternoon. So each one of us just has to do once a month, Thursday afternoon, and we take Brenda out and we just do something for fun. So I was last Thursday, our other friend and Brenda and I went for a walk in the park, and then we went for ice cream after. It was a beautiful day. And we just hung out and had a wonderful afternoon together. It was a miracle kind of discovering that two people coming over together made it easier to support Brenda, as opposed to just one-on-one. As she progresses through her illness, that second visitor is a buffer for the first visitor and for Brenda. So just wanted to throw that out there. Bringthemameal.com, that's actually a website. I mean, bringing anybody a meal anytime helps my well-being. It helps me to give a meal and it helps me to receive one. And think of 3 easy tasks others could do regularly. Turning worries into plans. We could do a whole other presentation on that. That's really key in well-being, I think, is to flip worries into plans. I wanted to share with you too this podcast called The Waiting Room Revolution.com. It's given by 2 palliative care experts. And never mind the palliative care part, this is about living with serious illness and the keys to how to do it well for the whole family. It's a fantastic podcast. I highly recommend it. And find slivers of time for things that give you peace in your heart. A friend of mine who's another caregiver takes the time when her husband is in the bathroom to do Sudoku. That's a sliver of time. It's maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and that's when she does a puzzle. And so this isn't about dreaming big and trips to Florida or anything. It's about getting this sense of well-being into our daily lives as we move through a diagnosis such as MS with someone we love. So I would love to invite questions now, and we'll Stan, I give it over to you. And Gabby, yes, do we have some
Donna, that
questions?
was fabulous. We do. Thank you so much. Your experience and the work that you've done really shines through. So thank you so much for that informative presentation. It is time, like you said, now for the Q&A. We're going to start with a couple of pre-submitted questions that we've already got. So the first one is, any tips, please, for caregiver me time?
Yeah, caregiver me time. It comes in big and small. So we're talking about the moments, as I just mentioned, when my caregiver friend is doing a Sudoku puzzle when her husband just goes to the bathroom. That's a real little sliver of me time. I think when talking about those slivers of time, I think we need to be intentional. It's so easy to not recognize that those 3 or 4 minutes are an opportunity for me time. First of all, it's the recognizing when you have slivers of time and what do you want to do with them. If you have 3 minutes, what do you want to do with it to turn it into me time? So she didn't have to look around for choices. She's got Sudoku at the ready every time she's got a sliver of time. So I think planning these me times, even if they're tiny, that's key. In terms of me time, everybody's me time looks different. Some people want to be alone for their me time. That's going to require you possibly, very, very possibly, to replace yourself with your loved ones so that you can have some alone time. Then you need to consider, is my alone time at home? Do I need to leave home to get my me time? And hopefully, like if you do, fair enough. You've got a plan to be out of the house for that. Maybe it's the gym. Maybe it's a quilting circle. Maybe it is going to work. Maybe your me time is keeping that job outside of the house. So I think, again, here it's a question of recognizing what is your me time and saying, how can I get the support that I need to get it? The big me time, of course, is respite, is a holiday with girlfriends, is being able to play, a 6-hour game of 18 holes of golf and have dinner with your golf pals after. That's big me time. That's a whole day out. So claiming that and working backwards from that aspiration to see what would need to be in place to make that happen, and who do I know on my care plan who could help me make it, a care map, sorry, who could help me, who are my allies in planning my me time. So some of it's just, getting those slivers, which are very helpful when you add them up in a day, and then dreaming big and making the big production of something more ambitious happen using the allies in your life, I think.
Excellent, excellent advice. Thank you so much. All right, our next question is coming a little more, it's a bigger one, I think, in some ways. This person is asking, what do you do if someone is suffering mental health issues but refuses to seek professional help?
There is very little that you can do to force someone to get professional help if they refuse. What I would say is that, having experienced this in my own family, I would say go to get professional help yourself. Talk about the professional help with your loved one and how it's going, what it's doing for you, if your person would be open to that conversation. There's a reason that mental health supports are often for families. And, in the context of addictions, for example, Al-Anon, there may be these types of issues in which people will not seek help for themselves. So in that context, and we're talking about mental health here, we need to seek help for ourselves. How are we going to cope with the mental health symptoms of that person who will not seek help for themselves? And a mental health professional may be very helpful in help strategies for how to manage this. And a lot of it is about creating barriers and boundaries, rather, for what it is you're going to absorb. And how do you go about setting these boundaries in the context of someone's behavior? And we know this behavior represents suffering. This is suffering. And so often we take on this suffering, we absorb it. But I think in this instance, we do need to have a lot of armor, and we aren't going to know necessarily how to get that armor, put it on, and use it effectively without professional help ourselves. And maybe by example, a person would see that, gee, my husband, wife, daughter is getting this help, so maybe I should reconsider. Maybe it is a good thing if they see that it's helpful to others in the family, including the caregiver.
Thank you very much, Donna. You've given some great tips and some great resources for people to follow up with, and I really appreciate your time with us today. That does wrap up all the questions we actively have on the go. Let me just double check. Oh, here we go. We've got a couple more, or one more has come in. Are there caregiver support groups at the MS Society? Well, I don't know if that's a question directly for you, Donna, but I can say yes, there absolutely are. We have peer support groups and we have one-to-one support groups. There are specific caregiver support groups available through the MS Society. Of course, through COVID in the last couple of years, a lot of the support groups, virtually all of them, have gone virtual. With things lifting, it is an individual situation across the country, depending where you are. The best way to access those support groups is through our MS Knowledge Network, and I'm going to be talking about that a little bit in today's wrap-up about how you can access that. So Donna, I want to thank you so much for your time today. This has been an excellent, excellent presentation with heaps of information for people. And we appreciate your time so much. Thank you for being here today. Oh, wait, I'm just double checked. We've got some more questions coming in. How am I doing time-wise? We're okay. All right, so Donna, here we go. The next question we have coming in is, any ways to get rid of the feeling of guiltiness when I try to have me time? I'm a caregiver of my husband with MS. So this is a question about guilt.
Mm-hmm. Oh boy, it's a big one. I think everyone experiences it. It's a challenge, particularly if you're kind of hardwired to experience those guilty feelings in the first place. Look back at when other times that you may have felt guilty, when you've been with your friends, or you've been with your other children. All of this. If we're prone to guilty feelings, we've got a huge mountain to climb in the caregiving role. That said, I think a couple of things. One is that in talking to other caregivers in peer support groups with the care team managing the patient, your own GP, you should seek public permission from people in charge of your loved one's care. I mean, it's almost like if you get a written prescription from your doctor. You know, there's this new thing called social prescribing that doctors do now. A doctor will write on a prescription pad, go to the art gallery, go to your bowling club, and Google social prescribing. It's huge. And many, many physicians do this now. And I think you need to get a prescription for me time and a medical need. It's about validating the importance of taking this kind of time and putting energy into yourself, because caregiving in the context of a disease like MS is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And we need to be there for the last day just as much as we need to be there for today. So it's just necessary. And I also think that if we can, talk this over with the person you're caring for and get they need to give you the orders to go out and do your self-care too. As explicit permission. And it's okay to say, you know, I have these feelings that I feel badly, and I don't allow myself the joy and the benefit of this me time. Can everybody else in the family help me with this? I need to be able to reap the benefits of me time. So can you help me support me, give me the permission, say it out loud. And I need to tell myself, remind myself all the time that this is necessary for my health and the health of my loved one, the health of my family.
Excellent advice, Donna. Thank you again so much. We have come to the end of our time for questions. Donna, thank you for your sharing your expertise with us today. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Before we wrap up, we want to remind you about the MS Knowledge Network. We've referred to it a couple of times in today's presentation. It is staffed by trained navigators. They provide consistent quality information and support. You can connect by phone, email, or live chat, or through the MS Society's website. If you'd like to sign up for the monthly e-newsletter, an MS Navigator can help you do that. When you receive the e-news, you're kept up to date on the latest MS research, treatments, the Society's programs and services, fundraising, and volunteer opportunities. Personal stories from people affected by MS. There's so much more that are in those e-newsletters, and they're delivered right to your email inbox. We'd like to encourage you to get involved with our programs, services, events, and volunteer opportunities. These days, connecting with each other is more important than ever. And this month, MS Walks are occurring virtually, and in some communities, we are welcoming back people to in-person events. I know the one here in my community is virtual, so I'll be picking my own route again this year. More information is, of course, available always on the MS Society website. The other thing we wanted to point out today, and it's up there on the screen, is We Challenge MS. We encourage you to visit wechallengems.ca. It's another website to learn about how you can help to raise funds which are needed to maintain our research commitments, our advocacy initiatives, and programming to support those affected by MS. Now, very soon, you will receive an email that will contain a survey about today's webinar, and we encourage you to fill it out. I should note as well that some of the information outlined by Donna today in her fabulous presentation will be in that wrap-up email with websites and resources that you can tap into. All the information collected in that survey will help us to know if today's discussion was valuable to you and what topics you'd like to see covered in the future at other webinars. It's not a long survey. It will only take a couple of minutes, and your feedback will go a long way to helping us plan future educational sessions. Now, once again, it's important to acknowledge the generous sponsorship that was received to make this webinar and other caregiver information and support initiatives possible. It's the Rexall Care Network Caregiver Program at the MS Society of Canada. Now, please note, this is a busy month here in Canada. May is MS Awareness Month, it's Walk Month, and also it's almost World MS Day. That's coming up on May 30th. More than 2.8 million people around the world have MS, and this is an opportunity to bring the global MS community together to share stories, raise awareness about multiple sclerosis, and advocate for better services and supports, plus reduce social isolation for those living and affected by MS. The theme for World MS Day this year is connections, and we encourage you as well to get involved and share your story to help raise awareness about Canada's disease. We want to thank you for tuning in today for today's broadcast. Stay safe. Goodbye.